Seems to me if we were ever living in a time and an era when wisdom was needed, we're living in that time now. For many of us, it feels like wisdom seems like a far-off dream. But the book of Proverbs would have us know that wisdom is not a far-off dream. Listen to what was read just a little while ago. Does not Lady Wisdom call on the heights where big things like worship occurs, beside the way, on the crossroads, alongside the gates, in front of the town, at the entrances? Wisdom calls everywhere, Proverbs is saying. It's calling in your home. It's calling in the United States Senate. It's calling in the White House. It's calling in the courts. It's even calling in our worship space today. It's calling at Myers. It's calling at the bar. It's calling at the restaurant. It's calling as we gather as the church. It's calling at the intersections of life. It's calling where decisions have to be made on big issues like guns and mental health services and abortion. It's calling where people come together. It's calling where marriages are entered into and where marriages are falling apart. It's calling in all kinds of relationships. It's calling in public schools and private schools and home schools. It's calling to you. It's calling to me. It's calling to all of us. It's calling everyone and everywhere. That is the vision of the book of Proverbs today. And for Proverbs, wisdom is no new kid on the block. It's older than creation itself. The Lord, Proverbs says, created me, that is wisdom, at the beginning of his work. Ages ago, I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth. When God established the heavens, I was there. When he made firm the skies, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit, I was beside him. Mythically, the author of Proverbs is describing wisdom as God's constant companion from the beginning of creation. It's really a fascinating view. From the beginning, God was not alone. God was not alone in God's work of creating. God had a partner. And according to Proverbs, that partner was wisdom. And again, according to Proverbs, wisdom was beside God like a master worker. That is, one who was subservient to God, but one who was doing God's work. Now, some translations of this particular verse suggest that master worker could be better translated little child. God, from the beginning, had a playful child at his side. Proverbs says that this little child, wisdom, was daily his delight. Day after day, they had fun together. Sometimes I think playful children can be much wiser than adults whose seriousness brings them to the conclusion that wisdom is simply a matter of their opinions. Richard Rohr is right on the money when he claims that opinion is the lowest form of knowledge. Wisdom and its calling isn't a matter of arming you with further information and further zealousness for the sharpening of your opinion. For the wisdom writers, like those who put together Proverbs, wisdom rather is the order of creation. It's the order of the universe. You know, it may seem like that life is quite disorderly and chaotic, and lately to me it's felt that way big time. But for most of the wisdom writers, life at its depths is not disorder. At its depths, from the beginning, wisdom is saying, there has been an order to life. There have been boundaries. And so life is not just an experience of chaos that makes it perplexing, makes life too hard to figure out. Sometimes, not always, by the way, but sometimes you need to hear that. Sometimes when children are massacred, brutal, unjust wars are fought, and suffering seems to be everywhere, you need to hear that life isn't just one awful thing after another. You need to hear that there is some kind of order in the midst of what feels like disorder. And this is the promise of wisdom literature. Hidden deep in life, hidden in creation itself, is an order that keeps the waters of life from becoming one massive flood. Sadly, I have to say, more and more, we are living in a time when many of us, too many of us, don't trust that. We're living in a society in which more and more of us think that there is no order, except that which is imposed upon us by society and societal forces. And while I think they have something right to say in their opinion there, I also believe the consequence of that has not always been good. When there's no order at all, then some of us will do whatever we darn well please whenever we darn well want. And good social functioning requires some degree of order. Children need order. They need boundaries. And as you're working out the early part of your life, you need boundaries, and you need to know who's in and who's out. And by the way, when you get older, you can probably let all that go. But at some point, you need to know that life has order. And wisdom literature like Proverbs says that there is order, and it's built into creation itself. And it goes on to say something that I think is absolutely marvelous, that we human beings are a part of that good order. Lady Wisdom today is said by Proverbs to not only enjoy the inhabited world, but also to delight in the human race. She has fun with the human race. The psalm for today is absolutely incredible in its description of God's delight in us, human beings. Listen to the psalm. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings? What am I that you are mindful of us and me? Mortals, that you care for us. Yet you have made them a little lower than God. To be human is a remarkable thing. And isn't that an amazing message on Holy Trinity Sunday, when you would think the emphasis today would be on how great it is to be God? And it is, by the way. And while that is a part of the message, the glory of being human is also a part of our message on Holy Trinity Day. We have been given an extraordinary status. We are no junk, and anybody who treats you like you're junk and anybody who treats as if you don't matter, you need to let them know that that's not true, and you need to get away from them, because you are no junk. You've been created a little lower than God. We together have been created a little lower than God. Sometimes, not always, sometimes you need to hear this. Because when you look around and when you are exposed to the 24-hour news cycle to which most of us are exposed, you begin to believe that human beings are just self-centered, self-serving, self-preoccupied slobs. And sometimes we are. I mean, we got to tell the truth. Today's not one of those days, all right? But Proverbs says we have a royal status. And we've been given quite the job description, by the way. Caretakers of all things. On Memorial Day, Liam and I went to the splash pad in downtown, and he just loves this water-saturated place. It was a little chilly for my taste, but nonetheless, while we were there, a woman pulls up in a big old vehicle and unloads 8 children and teenagers, all of whom had physical, or cognitive disabilities. 2 of these were in wheelchairs with extremely serious challenges. And then another woman arrived on the scene, and she unloaded 5 kids, all of whom had special needs. At one point, when these 2 women were given a slight break from the constant barrage of demands that were coming their way, I asked them if these were their children. I thought maybe they worked for a group home. Oh, yes, they said, we adopted them all. And the woman who had 5 said, well, we're about ready to adopt a 6th. Well, I watched that experience in awe and admiration, thinking, man, Bill, you are a slouch. It is absolutely amazing what human beings can do. Last week I visited a woman in hospice who obviously is on her way, or has just recently died, actually. Now, honestly, just between us, this woman wasn't always easy. She can be quite demanding. Well, watching the workers from the home, whom I am sure are not paid particularly well, was an experience for me of great humility and inspiration. These workers were so caring, so loving. Their words, their actions, their affections. You would think this woman was a member of the royal family. And guess what? She is, and she was. She has been created a little lower than God. And the nursing staff trusted that, and they lived that. They reflected the glory of God. Oh, the amazing things we human beings can do, especially when we live into the order that God has given to creation, an order which places human beings at the center. Again, it's kind of wild that on Holy Trinity Sunday, you and I are let in on the glory of being human. But I suspect that is in part due to what we experience in the Trinity itself. What the Trinity tells us, this wild doctrine that lots of folks have argued and even killed each other over, this doctrine tells us that God in God's self is relational. When you read from John, from which our gospel reading came from today, you get a sense that the members of the Trinity are in constant relationship. John today says, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will speak not on his own, but whatever he hears. And what he hears, where does that come from? From Jesus. So he's speaking the words of Jesus. And John goes on to say that Jesus will not glorify himself, but the Spirit will glorify him. And then John goes on to say, all that the Father, or Jesus and John, all that the Father has is mine. What Jesus has isn't his own. It comes from God. God gives it to him. And he's going to give it to other people. And he's going to focus it on the Holy Spirit. There is such a dynamic relationship within God. And note that the relationship is one of mutual selflessness. Every person of the Trinity ends up focusing on another person in the Trinity. The glory of the Trinity is the glory of relationship. Now, you and I live in a culture that prides itself on creating self-made men and self-made women, as if what matters in life is independence, reliance on no one. Well, what the Trinity tells us is that even God is in relationship. God doesn't seem overly preoccupied with being a self-made God. Relationship is not incidental to what life means, but is built into the very, very fabric of life, into the order of creation. Richard Rohr says that not only is God in relationship, God is relationship itself. That, you see, is the primary order of life. That is the wisdom of life. Relationship. relationship shaped by self-giving love. It's relationship shaped by self-giving love that brought everything into being. It's relationship shaped by self-giving love that set all the boundaries. It's relationship shaped by self-giving love that made us a little lower than the angels and a little lower than God. It is relationship shaped by self-giving love that gives us a royal status. It is relationship shaped by self-giving love that governs even the way the Trinity operates. It is relationship shaped by self-giving love that eventually and ultimately sets the agenda for you and me. Our calling in life is not to be lone rangers who do whatever we darn well please. Our calling is to be in relationship, living it out in self-giving love. Amen.